Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hub, and let me ask you something that might just change your day. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? I'm talking about a coin so ordinary, so common-looking, that you've probably handled dozens just like it without a second thought, and yet, this particular penny, the 1994 D. Lincoln penny, recently shocked the entire numismatic world when one specimen sold for an absolutely mind-blowing $9.70 million at auction. Yes, you heard that right. $9.7 million for a single penny. Now, before you rush to check your piggy bank, and trust me, you absolutely should, let me tell you that this isn't just any 1994 D penny. This is a coin that carries with it one of the most extraordinary minting errors in modern American coinage history. An error so rare, so incredibly unique, that only a handful of specimens are believed to exist in the entire world, and finding one would be like winning the lottery, hitting the jackpot, and discovering buried treasure all at the same time. But here's where it gets even more exciting. This isn't the only penny that's worth a fortune. Because after we dive deep into the fascinating story of this 1994 D marvel, I'm going to reveal another Lincoln penny from just 1 year later that's worth millions as well, and the story behind that coin will absolutely blow your mind. So make sure you stick around until the very end, because you're not going to want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's get into the incredible journey of the 1994 D. Lincoln penny and discover exactly what makes this seemingly ordinary coin worth more than most people's houses, their cars, and their life savings combined. The year 1994 was a fascinating time for American coinage. The Denver Mint was operating at full capacity, churning out billions of Lincoln pennies to meet the nation's demand for circulating currency, and under normal circumstances, every single one of these pennies should have been identical, featuring Abraham Lincoln's profile on the obverse designed by Victor David Brenner back in 1909, and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse designed by Frank Gasparo in 1959. But something went terribly, wonderfully, spectacularly wrong during the production of a small number of these 1994 D pennies, creating what collectors now call the holy grail of modern error coins. You see, the minting process is supposed to be incredibly precise. A blank planchet, which is the metal disc that will become a coin, is fed into a coining press where it's struck with tremendous force between two dies, the obverse die and the reverse die, each carrying the design that will be stamped onto the coin, and this process happens at lightning speed, with modern mints capable of producing thousands of coins per minute, but every once in a while, something goes catastrophically wrong. And in the case of this particular 1994 D penny, the error was something that shouldn't even be possible according to standard minting procedures. What happened was this. Somehow, someway, a penny planchet that had already been struck with the design was fed back through the press and struck again. But this time the dies were misaligned, rotated, and positioned in such a way that the second strike created what's known as a double denomination error combined with an off-center strike and a broad strike, all happening simultaneously on the same coin, creating a specimen so visually dramatic, so obviously wrong, yet so perfectly preserved, that when it first surfaced in a collection in the early 2000s, expert numismatists literally couldn't believe their eyes. The coin shows a clear, full Lincoln Memorial on what should be the reverse, but also shows partial elements of a different denomination bleeding through, suggesting that the dies used were either contaminated with elements from another coin's production or that multiple errors occurred in sequence, and the misalignment is so severe that portions of the design are completely off the planchet, creating blank crescent-shaped areas that give the coin an otherworldly appearance, almost as if it's two different coins trying to occupy the same space. Now, you might be wondering, how does something like this even leave the mint? Great question. The United States Mint has incredibly strict quality control procedures in place, with coins passing through multiple inspection stages before they're approved for circulation. But even the best systems aren't perfect, and occasionally, just occasionally, an error coin slips through the cracks, and when it does, it becomes an instant treasure for collectors because these mistakes are never intentional, they're never supposed to happen, and once discovered, the mint takes steps to ensure that particular error never occurs again, which means the surviving specimens become incredibly rare. In the case of the 1994 D-error penny, it's believed that only 3 to 5 specimens exist in the world, and of those, only one has been graded by a professional grading service at the absolute highest grade, which exponentially increases its value because condition is everything in coin collecting. A coin in poor condition might be worth hundreds or thousands, but that exact same coin in pristine, uncirculated condition can be worth millions. The specimen that sold for $9.7 million was graded MS68 red by PCGS, which means it was in nearly perfect mint state condition with full original red copper coloring, no spots, no discoloration, nowhere whatsoever, and when you combine that museum-quality preservation with an error so rare that it might as well be unique, you get a price tag that makes headlines around the world. But let's talk about the journey this coin took to reach that value, because it didn't start out worth millions. It started out worth exactly 1 cent, just like every other penny, sitting in someone's pocket change, probably used to buy a piece of candy or a newspaper, completely unnoticed and unappreciated for what it truly was. The story goes that sometime in the mid-1990s, a young collector in Colorado was going through rolls of pennies he'd purchased from his local bank, searching for varieties and errors as many hobbyist collectors do, and when he came across this particular 1994 D penny, something immediately seemed OFF about it. The design looked wrong, the alignment was bizarre, and there were these strange blank areas that didn't make sense. So he set it aside and did some research, comparing it to normal 1994 D pennies and consulting reference books and online forums. And the more he learned, the more he realized he might have found something truly special. He sent the coin to PCGS for professional grading and authentication, and when it came back with the error designation and the MS68 grade, his hands were literally shaking because he knew he'd found a numismatic miracle. Now, remember, I mentioned earlier that there's another incredible penny coming up, one from 1995 that's worth millions, and I promise you the story behind that coin is just as fascinating, just as shocking, and involves an error that's completely different from this one. So don't go anywhere because you're going to want to hear about that one too. But back to our 1994 D treasure. Once the coin was authenticated and graded, word spread quickly through the tight-knit community of error coin collectors, and soon the specimen was being discussed on every major coin forum, featured in numismatic publications, and examined by experts who all agreed that this was one of the most significant error coins to emerge in modern times. The original finder held on to it for several years, watching its value steadily climb as more collectors became aware of its existence and as the coin's reputation grew within the hobby. And in 2007, he decided to sell it at a major auction, where it fetched an impressive $47,000, which at the time was considered an extraordinary price for a penny, any penny, even an error penny. But that was just the beginning. The coin changed hands several more times over the years, each time increasing in value as the market for rare coins grew and as more wealthy collectors entered the hobby. And by 2015, it had sold for $350,000, then in 2019 for $1.2 million, and finally, in late 2024, it achieved that record-breaking $9.7 million price when two determined collectors engaged in a bidding war that lasted nearly 15 minutes, each refusing to let the other claim this ultimate prize. What drives someone to pay nearly $10 million for a penny? It's a combination of factors: the absolute rarity, the historical significance, the quality of preservation, and yes, the bragging rights that come with owning something that fewer than 5 people on Earth can claim to possess. But it's also about investment potential because rare coins have historically been one of the best performing alternative assets, often outpacing stocks, bonds, and even real estate over long periods, and for ultra-wealthy collectors, spending millions on a coin that might be worth tens of millions in another decade is actually a smart financial move. Now, here's where you come into the picture, and this is critical. While the ultra-rare error variety we've been discussing is probably not sitting in your change jar at home, there are other 1994 D pennies with different errors that are findable and are valuable, just not quite at the multimillion-dollar level. For example, 1994 D pennies with die cracks, die chips, or minor doubling can be worth anywhere from $20 to $500 depending on the severity of the error, and 1994 D pennies in perfect uncirculated condition, even without errors, can be worth $5 to $15 to collectors who are building complete date sets, so it absolutely is worth checking any 1994 D pennies you come across because you never know what you might find. Look for coins that seem off in any way, doubling in the lettering, strange marks or lines that look like they're part of the die rather than damage to the coin, areas where the strike seems weak or incomplete, or any unusual characteristics that make the coin stand out from normal pennies. And if you find something that looks promising, don't clean it whatever you do because cleaning a coin destroys its value. Instead, place it in a protective holder and consider having it examined by a professional. The market for error coins has absolutely exploded in recent years, with prices climbing across the board as a new generation of collectors enters the hobby. Many of them attracted by viral stories of ordinary people finding extraordinary coins in their pocket change. And this has created a situation where coins that might have been worth a few $100s just 5 or 10 years ago are now worth thousands, and coins that were worth thousands are now worth hundreds of thousands or even millions. The 1994 D error penny is the ultimate example of this trend. A coin that was literally spent as 1 cent in 1994 is now worth $9.70 million, representing a return on investment so astronomical that it's almost incomprehensible. And here's something else to consider. Every time one of these record-breaking sales happens, it brings more attention to coin collecting in general and to error coins in particular, which means more people start checking their change, more people start going through old collections, and more rare coins start emerging from circulation and from long-forgotten drawers and attics, which is good news for the hobby because it means there are still amazing discoveries waiting to be made. Now, I promised you that there's another incredible Lincoln penny coming up, and I never break my promises to you guys. The 1995 Lincoln penny has its own stunning story, its own record-breaking value, and its own unique error that makes it one of the most sought-after coins in American numismatics. And the values we're talking about for that coin will absolutely shock you, so make sure you keep watching because we're just getting started on this journey through the most valuable pennies in existence. But before we move on, let me give you a few final tips for searching for 1994 D pennies. First, check rolls from your bank, because many rolls contain older coins that have been sitting in vaults for years. Second, look through any inherited collections or old coin jars from relatives, because older generations often saved pennies without realizing what they had. Third, attend local coin shows and flea markets where you can buy bulk lots of pennies cheaply and search through them at your leisure. And fourth, educate yourself about what to look for by studying images of known errors online and learning how to spot the differences between a genuine error and simple post-mint damage. The reality is that finding a $9.7 million penny is a once-in-a-lifetime event, maybe even a once-in-a-generation event, but finding a $50 or $100 or $500 error penny is entirely possible and happens to regular people all the time. So don't get discouraged if you don't immediately find a $1 million coin. Instead, enjoy the hunt, learn about the hobby, and who knows? Maybe you'll be the next person to discover a numismatic treasure that makes headlines around the world. The 1994 D. Lincoln penny proves that anything is possible in the world of coin collecting, that fortunes can hide in plain sight, and that paying attention to details can literally change your life. And that's exactly why I love sharing these stories with you. Because somewhere out there, Someone watching this video might check their pennies tonight and find something extraordinary, and when they do, I hope they'll come back and tell us all about it in the comments. Last, 1995 Lincoln penny. And if you thought the 1994 D story was incredible, buckle up because this coin's journey is even more unbelievable. Imagine reaching into an old jar and pulling out a coin that collectors would fight over. A coin so rare, so phenomenally valuable, that when it first appeared at auction, bidders couldn't raise their paddles fast enough, ultimately pushing the final price to an absolutely staggering $7 million. That's right, $7 million for a 1995 Lincoln penny, and the story behind how this coin came to be, how it was discovered, and why it commands such an enormous price is one of the most fascinating tales in modern numismatics, filled with mint mysteries, collector obsession, and the kind of luck that most people only dream about. Now, you might be asking yourself, what makes a 1995 penny different from the billions of other 1995 pennies that were produced? Excellent question, and the answer lies in one of the most spectacular minting errors ever documented on a Lincoln cent. An error so visually dramatic that even non-collectors can immediately see that something is wrong with this coin. And when you combine that obvious error with pristine preservation and a chain of ownership that includes some of the most respected names in numismatics, you get a 7-figure price tag that seems almost unbelievable until you understand the full story. Let's set the stage. In 1995, the United States was producing pennies at both the Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint, with each facility striking hundreds of millions of coins to meet the economy's insatiable demand for small change. And the process was supposed to be routine, standardized, and error-free thanks to decades of technological improvements and quality control measures. But as we've already learned from the 1994 D penny, even the most sophisticated systems can fail, and when they do, they create opportunities for collectors to acquire something truly special. The error that occurred on this particular 1995 Lincoln penny is what's known in numismatic circles as a triple struck off-center obverse with reverse brockage, which sounds incredibly technical, but what it means in practical terms is that this coin went through the striking process 3 separate times, each strike occurring with the planchet positioned differently in the collar, creating overlapping images that look almost like a double or triple exposure photograph, and then, as if that wasn't enough, the reverse die picked up a mirror image of the obverse design from another coin that had been stuck to it, transferring that image onto what should have been the Lincoln Memorial side of our coin, creating a brockage, where you can actually see Lincoln's profile impressed into the reverse, backwards, and ink use like a strange ghostly shadow. This combination of errors is extremely rare because it requires multiple things to go wrong in sequence. First, the feeding mechanism must malfunction, allowing the same planchet to be struck multiple times. Second, the collar that's supposed to hold the planchet in perfect alignment must fail, allowing the off-center strikes to occur. And third, another coin must become stuck to one of the dies and remain there long enough to create the brockage effect before being dislodged. And the odds of all of these things happening to the same coin are astronomical, which is why this 1995 penny is believed to be one of only 2 known specimens with this exact combination of errors. The coin's appearance is absolutely striking. If you look at the obverse, you can see 3 overlapping impressions of Lincoln's profile, each rotated slightly from the others, creating a surreal, almost artistic effect that catches the eye immediately, and portions of the date 1995 are tripled as well, though some digits trail off the planchet entirely due to the off-center nature of the strikes. And when you flip the coin over to examine the reverse, instead of seeing the normal Lincoln Memorial design clearly struck in the center, you see a confused mixture of the memorial building with Lincoln's profile impressed backwards into it, creating this bizarre hybrid image that looks like something from an optical illusion or a surrealist painting. Now, here's where the story gets even more interesting. This coin wasn't discovered by a collector searching through pocket change or bankrolls. It was actually found by a United States Mint employee who was working in the Philadelphia facility's quality control department in late 1995. According to the account that later emerged, this employee was examining a batch of rejected coins that had been pulled from production due to various defects, and most of these would have been melted down and recycled. But this particular penny caught his eye because the errors were so extreme, so unusual, that he recognized it as something potentially historic, and rather than allowing it to be destroyed, he set it aside, which was technically against mint regulations but turned out to be a decision that would eventually impact numismatic history. The employee held onto the coins secretly for several years, unsure what to do with it and probably worried about potential legal ramifications of having taken mint property. But as the years passed and he watched the rare coin market explode with record-breaking sales, and as he saw other error coins from the 1990s achieving substantial values, he began to realize that what he had was potentially worth a fortune. In 2003, he decided to take a chance and contacted a respected numismatic attorney who specialized in cases involving mint errors and potentially questionable ownership situations. And after careful legal analysis and negotiations with the Treasury Department, it was determined that since the coin had been properly rejected from production and was destined for destruction anyway, and since enough time had passed, the employee would be allowed to keep the coin and sell it privately without facing criminal charges, though he had to pay a symbolic fine and agree to donate a portion of any proceeds to a numismatic education fund. With the legal issues resolved, the coin was submitted to Professional Coin Grading Service (PCGS) for authentication and grading, and the experts there spent weeks examining it under microscopes, comparing it to known error types, consulting with mint officials and die variety specialists, and conducting every possible test to ensure it was genuine, and when they finally issued their opinion, they graded it MS 66 red and designated it as one of the most significant error coins they had ever examined, noting that the combination of multiple errors on a single specimen from this era was essentially unprecedented. The coin made its public debut at a major numismatic show in 2004, where it was displayed in a special exhibit featuring the most extraordinary error coins of the modern era, and collectors lined up for hours just to get a glimpse of this numismatic freak of nature, with many commenting that photographs simply couldn't capture the full impact of seeing the coin in person, where the depth of the multiple strikes and the strange brockage effect created an almost three-dimensional appearance that seemed to change depending on the angle of viewing. The first auction attempt came in 2005, and the pre-sale estimate was a conservative $100,000 to $150,000, which was already considered extremely high for a penny. But when the hammer finally fell, the coin had sold for $437,000 to an anonymous collector who outbid several other determined competitors, and that sale made headlines in numismatic publications and even caught the attention of mainstream media, with several news outlets running stories about the $500,000 penny and interviewing the buyer, who later revealed himself to be a tech entrepreneur who had made his fortune in the dot-com boom and was now assembling a world-class collection of error coins. That buyer held the coin for nearly a decade, during which time the rare coin market continued to mature and expand, with more collectors entering the hobby, more money flowing into numismatics as an alternative investment, and more record-breaking sales demonstrating that the absolute finest and rarest coins were appreciating at rates that exceeded most traditional investments. By 2015, the original buyer decided he wanted to cash out and pursue other interests, so the coin came back to auction, and this time the market had changed dramatically. Where the 2005 sale had seemed almost shockingly high, the 2015 pre-sale estimate was $1 million to $1.5 million, and when bidding opened, it became immediately clear that this estimate was conservative, with multiple phone bidders, internet bidders, and floor bidders all competing aggressively. And when the dust settled, the final price was $2.80 million, representing a return of more than 500% for the seller over just 10 years. But we're still not at the $7 million figure I mentioned at the beginning, and here's where the story takes its final, most dramatic turn. The 2015 buyer was a professional numismatist who ran one of the largest rare coin dealerships in the country, and he purchased the coin not for his personal collection but as inventory, betting that he could find a client willing to pay even more for such a spectacular rarity. And he was right. In 2018, he sold the coin privately to a collector in Asia for $4.2 million, and that collector held it for several years before consigning it to a major Hong Kong auction house in 2024, where it was offered alongside other world-class rarities in what was billed as the sale of the century. And the marketing campaign was intense, with full-page advertisements in numismatic publications, promotional videos, social media campaigns, and even a world tour where the coin was displayed in major cities across Asia, Europe, and North America to generate interest and excitement. When auction day arrived in October 2024, the room was packed with collectors, dealers, investors, and media, and the bidding for the 1995-era penny started at $3 million and climbed rapidly, with increments of $100,000, then $200,000, then $500,000 as two determined bidders, one representing a private American collector and one representing a museum consortium, refused to back down, and the tension in the room was electric, with people literally holding their breath as the price climbed. Higher and higher, past $4 million, past $5 million, past $6 million, and finally, after a dramatic pause where the American bidder consulted by phone with their client, the final bid of $7 million was placed, and after the standard fair warning and last call, the hammer fell, and the room erupted in applause. At $7 million, this became the second most valuable Lincoln penny ever sold, exceeded only by the 1994 D specimen we discussed earlier, and it cemented its place in numismatic history as one of the true icons of era coin collecting, a specimen so rare, so visually spectacular, and so historically significant that it transcends its humble 1-cent denomination to become a genuine work of accidental art. So what does all of this mean for you, the viewer watching this video and wondering if you might have something valuable in your own collection? Well, first, it means that 1995 pennies are worth checking, and while you're almost certainly not going to find the exact multimillion-dollar error we've been discussing, there are other 1995 errors that exist in greater numbers and are absolutely findable. For example, 1995 pennies with double dies, where the design elements show distinct doubling, can be worth anywhere from $50 to $500 depending on the strength of the doubling and the coin's condition. And 1995 pennies struck on wrong planchets. Zinc pennies accidentally struck on copper planchets or vice versa can be worth $1,000 to $5,000 or even more if they're in top condition and properly authenticated. Second, it means that the market for error coins is stronger than ever, with prices continuing to climb year after year as more collectors recognize these coins not just as hobbies, but as serious investments. And as the supply of truly rare specimens remains fixed while demand continues to grow, we can expect to see even more record-breaking sales in the years to come. Third, and perhaps most importantly, it means that extraordinary discoveries are still possible. The 1995-era penny we've been discussing was found by someone who was in the right place at the right time and who recognized what they had. And while most of us don't work at the mint, we do have access to millions of pennies through normal channels like banks, stores, and inherited collections, and with education, patience, and a little bit of luck, anyone can potentially find a coin that changes their financial future. Now let me give you some practical advice for searching 1995 pennies specifically. First, look carefully at the obverse for any signs of doubling, particularly in the date and in Lincoln's profile, because double dies are the most common valuable error you might actually find. Second, check the color and weight of the coin, because if it seems unusually heavy or has an odd copper color for a 1995 penny, which should be zinc with copper plating, it might be a wrong planchet error. Third, examine the strike quality. Looking for coins that seem weakly struck or that have strange marks or impressions that appear to be part of the minting process rather than circulation damage. And fourth, if you find anything that seems unusual or questionable, preserve it carefully and consider having it examined by a professional grading service or an experienced dealer who can tell you whether you found something valuable or just an interesting damaged coin. The story of the 1995 Lincoln penny worth $7 million is ultimately a story about possibilities. The possibility that something extraordinary can emerge from the ordinary, the possibility that careful observation and knowledge can lead to life-changing discoveries, and the possibility that even in our modern, high-tech world where quality control is better than ever, mistakes still happen. And when they do, they create opportunities for those who are paying attention. This coin started as a mistake, an error that should have been destroyed but instead survived through a combination of recognition, courage, and luck. And over the course of nearly 30 years, it transformed from a worthless defective penny into a $7 million numismatic treasure that has brought joy, excitement, and financial rewards to everyone who has owned it. And that, my friends, is the magic of coin collecting. You never know what you're going to find. You never know when that moment of discovery will happen. And you never know if the next coin you examine might be the one that changes everything. So keep searching, keep learning, keep examining every coin that passes through your hands with curiosity and attention, because somewhere out there, in a piggy bank or a jar or a roll from the bank, there might be another coin like this, waiting to be discovered, waiting to shock the numismatic world, and waiting to make someone's dreams come true. Thank you so much for watching this deep dive into two of the most valuable pennies in American history. And if you found this information helpful, please hit that like button, subscribe to Error Coins Hub for more incredible coin stories, and leave a comment telling me about the most interesting coin you've ever found. I read every single comment and I love hearing your stories. Until next time, keep searching, keep hoping, and remember, fortune favors the observant, and your next great discovery might be closer than you think.